Borders are an integral part of any comic, but what can borders do besides simply separate pictures in a comic? Borders can serve a higher purpose by being a part of the story, and actually being used as an aspect. Here, we'll examine the multiple uses of creative borders in Mass Effect Redemption, written by Mac Walters and illustrated by Omar Francia. First, borders can intensify a situation, or enhance the feeling, by conveying it through a different frame. This panel shows Liara, the main protagonist, being hit by a shockwave from a grenade launcher. Not only does the illustration itself show the action, along with the words, but the border is angled in such a way that it exaggerates the sense that Liara is being knocked off her feet. The red and black color of the border also serves to highlight the explosion, which is of a similar color. A similar thing happens here where Farron's ship is being attacked. The border here is tilted in the direction that Liara and Farron are falling over. Not only that, but the next panel is shifted in the other direction to show that they are getting their bearings straight and that they are recovering from the last hit. The borders in all the images so far have been used to create or exaggerate the sense of movement. Any sort of hit, destruction, or disturbance warrants an irregular border. The angle of the border, along with the style, can create different senses and attempt to put you in the situation being portrayed, like Liara destroying a facility with her biotics. Take for instance these next two panels. The first one is circular and shows the scene from the perspective of an unknown sniper. The use of this is very unique, since most panels thus far have just been rectangular, and from the perspective of an outside narrator. It's putting you in the perspective of one of the people in the comic. The subsequent panel shows a Blue Sun mercenary shouting "Sniper" and reaching for his weapon. The border here is significant as well because this is also a circular border, a lot like the scope of a rifle. It seems to suggest that this person is also in the scope of the sniper, but puts emphasis on him specifically. The next image is interesting because of the overuse of a border. In this image, Liara's arm is ignoring the border, but the artist still chooses to draw a new border to compensate for her finger. It goes to show that Liara and Farron are still in the ship and are to a certain degree protected, though the redness of the border suggests that this may not hold true for long. Ignoring the border is something that seems to happen quite often in the series. Here, Liara and Farron are being ambushed by a group of Blue Sun's mercenaries. Since the border is being ignored, it is both exaggerating the action and showing that the action in both the panels is happening at the same time. Here's another strong example of this style. By ignoring the border in this panel, we get to see the full reaction from multiple points of view from one event. Liara pushes Farron to the ground, thinking he's a double agent. From this one action, we get to see Farron's surprise and Liara's shock. Ignoring the border can also create greater emphasis. In this image, a collector is accusing the Shadow Broker's agents of lying to him. Not only is he popping out of the border, putting emphasis on him, but he's also physically pointing at Taz, which is shown happening on the page without having to create a whole different scene. The same thing is happening here with a seemingly arbitrary border. The illustrator is saving time and space by putting Taz in the border there instead of breaking it up into 2 pages. Consequently, he's also able to put strong emphasis on both characters, since they both occupy a similar space, even if they're actually far apart in this situation. The panel is able to show Taz's unmoving facial expression and the soldier's inquisitive look without using multiple pages. As mentioned previously, ignoring the border can allow you to connect events. However, it's not just limited to events that are happening at the same time. In this panel, Farron is telling his life story, and we can visually see that these events are linked together in chronological order because the images are physically connected. It's showing how one thing leads to another by making it easier for your eye to trace. Inlaid panels are a little stranger, as they break a border with another border. Here, there's an extremely thick border with a panel breaking it in the middle. It seems as though this is meant to show off the fact that the character here is interjecting, that she's vocalizing a thought interrupting 2 others. Sometimes the artist won't just ignore the border, but he'll actively break it. Taz shooting his grenade launcher shows off his blatant disregard for his allies, and is reflected by the fact that the explosion has a disregard for the border. Ignoring it would put emphasis on the action, but it wouldn't show off the raw destructive power that his weapon has. Another excellent example is when Farron is dodging some blasted rock in an asteroid. Strangely, The artist decided to reborder the broken rock that came off the top of the explosion, but chose to destroy the border for the bottom half of the explosion, possibly to put emphasis on the destroyed drone as opposed to the rock. Sometimes, the artist will just put in a seemingly arbitrary border. These two pictures, for example, could do perfectly well without a simple red border encompassing the ship. It's supposed to show emphasis, size, and perspective. In both these panels, the ship is massive, and its size would be understated if not for the broken border. Again, it gives an excuse to show multiple perspectives. Only very few times will the artist choose to completely forego a border. During very long-winded, complicated explanations, where the character's emotions are not important, does a panel go without a border. Here, Farron is linking all the events of his story together, where he is not the focal point. When a character is seemingly mixed up into a series of events do we get panels like these. Compare this image to the previous one. Both of them tell a story, yes, but the difference is that the right image is about Farron and what he did to get here. The one on the left is a story about how Farron got there. As opposed to his own actions getting him here, the linkage of events is what caused him to be in this situation, where he's the object of fate. This can also happen if the artist wants to show you something that's not there in the situation, but the narrator of the story has experienced it before. Panels are a visual aid, and it will be pointless if comics were just talking heads. Here, the collectors are being described by the elusive man, but the pictures of the collectors in the background help the reader depict their nefariousness. Altogether, Mass Effect Redemption was effective at storytelling, using helpful visual and text-based aspects. There were a lot of other interesting factors used throughout the comic, but by far the most intriguing was the use of borders throughout the series. Borders are often an overlooked, unappreciated tool that can communicate a lot about the story without adding too much and cluttering the panels.